How easy is it to spin up Windows 11 in a Docker container? Let me show you. It's that simple. It's that easy. Okay, granted, I sped that up quite a bit, but you get the idea. And we're now using Windows 11 in Docker in a web browser. Now, connecting to this over a remote desktop, which is possible, will give you a much smoother experience. But ultimately, this is workable. This is doable. In this video, we're going to be looking at the various different operating systems from Windows over the years, and that is running an operating system inside a container inside Docker. And I find this fascinating because I'm also going to show you how we can use something called a Mac VLAN to expose that operating system so it appears as its own device on the network. So let's get into it. This is Docker, and this is the Windows Docker GitHub. It's been starred 15.4 thousand times, forked 1.3 thousand times, and it's watched 97. I absolutely love the idea of running an operating system inside a Docker container, because I've even reverse proxied these. And I mean, you could really use this for a lot of different things. I've had so many ideas of what I would use this for. I mean, you could literally spin up your own Amazon AWS business. You could literally have lots of these virtual machines running that other people could connect to. Obviously, you know, if you locked it down and put it behind things like VPNs, it'd make it ultra secure, because you certainly don't want people remote desktoping into these things. But I'll show you a few cool tricks around that later. For a project that only has 14 contributors, this is massive. And it may not seem that big to you all, but to some of us, this is huge. Now, it's got a fairly bog standard compose. And I've actually made a much larger compose file, which has all the possible options in it so that you can mess around and turn them on and off as you see fit. But if I copy mine out of here and I put this in a Notepad++, this is the file I've done. Now, I think versions are obsolete now, but we'll leave it there anyway. But this is what I've created out of that compose. So we've had, this is their compose that they've put up, the project maintainer. And this is basically an enhanced version of that compose. It basically has all the different environment variables and devices and things like that inside, so that it's just easier for you to mess with. Now, if you don't want this to be running in any specific network and you just want to play with it and you don't really think you're going to be putting this anywhere, you can literally just comment out a few of these things. Like, you can comment out networks, MAC LAN, and the IP address. You can then comment out this dev virtual host, which basically allows it to connect through the Windows operating system from inside the container to get a DHCP IP address from your router. You can turn that DHCP option off there as well, and that line. I don't have any volumes running on this at the moment, but you can, again, I've left some things in here. You can, some of these attribute to the other options in the environment variables. For example, if you wanted to run your own custom ISO, maybe you wanted to switch this up to Linux. I haven't tried it myself yet, but we certainly will give that a go in this video. You can then add more hard drives. So you've got like storage 2, storage 3 going on here, which I've mounted some things to, but I haven't actually got them running yet. And then all you've got to do is kind of put the environmental variables, disk 2, disk 3 in there, and choose the size of the hard drive that you're putting around. It's got some standard ports, as you can see, the 3389 port for Windows Remote Desktop, which I highly recommend, because although you can connect to the container through the web browser over 8006, it's way smoother to be running this over remote desktop. And again, if you've commented out the networks above because you don't want to use networks, you can actually just comment out these all here. Ooh, make sure we don't alter the composing anyway. And you can literally just comment out all this stuff if you're not going to use it. But I am going to use it. So we're going to keep those in there. And this is where we can actually change a few of the things. Now, I've got the Windows 11 OS that I want downloaded and installed into this container. Now, bearing in mind, unless you comment out this manual option here, the installation will all occur automatically. So literally, unless we say you want it manually done by doing that, and you'll click through, yes, keyboard setup, hard drive setup, all the bits and bobs, it'll literally just do it automatically for you. So so that's not a bad thing either. In fact, these should all be kind of lined up here, just in case you wanted to edit these. And I will have this on my GitHub, and I will have this linked in the description below just for you. Now, you can also have this pull a custom ISO from the internet if you want as well. Or you can have one on your hard drive, and you can pull it from the hard drive instead. So it's entirely up to yourself. But if you leave everything as default, what it's going to do is it's going to spin up a Windows 11 container with the English language, with the English keyboard setup and region. It's going to spin up a 62 gig hard drive space. It's going to use 4 gigs of RAM and use 4 CPU cores. Now, you can also change the default username and password here. I've got Docker and Gates, case sensitive, obviously. And some of the devices that I have in here as well. Because I'm actually putting this on a Mac VLAN network, which means it's going to look like its own computer system. It's going to look like its own server on my firewall, on my network. You're going to need to also pass out this dev vhostnet, which will allow Windows inside the container to pull a real IP address from your network. And because of the way Docker works and this particular device, it will actually pull 2 IP addresses for every one of these that you spin up. One will be for the actual Mac VLAN, which will allow it to connect out into your network. And the second one will be from this environmental URL here, DHCPY, and this device here. That means it'll pull another IP address to use inside the container. So you've got an IP for the container using the Mac VLAN network. And then you've got it pulling its actual IP address, which will remote desktop to by having DHCP yes and this device here. Now, if you want to, we can set home storage, for example, in here. So I'll tell you what we'll do while we're on here, just for example purposes. We will... Why are these all out of line? So if you uncomment any of these, it'll use that directory. Okay, and we're going to have it, currently we've got it set to this, but what we're really going to do is change it up to home Flix, which is my directory, my apps. And this is basically where on my Ubuntu server that I want this being installed to. I could put this as container VMs. I just put test Windows 11. So that's where the storage is going to actually run to. Again, you can do whatever you want with that. So I've uncommented these because we're going to be using this network. This is my subnet from my router. I'm also going to try later on, probably not in this video, but to see if I can actually get this to work on a VLAN. So it's isolated in its own VLAN as well. Might do it in the video, not too sure. And pretty much that should be good to go here. Okay, that looks good to me. So only one way to find out. Copy this in here. Now I use Dockge. I don't know if you do, but Dockge is basically like an alternative to Portainer. It's still being actively developed, but it can manage all your containers and compose files and envs and make things just spin up a lot nicer. So I like it. All paste. Right, let's give this a go. So let's see if we can spin this. Let's try and not do that one then. Let's do deploy. Here we go. Okay, so at this point, it's spinning up the container. It's downloading Windows 11. And by the way, the cool thing about this is you've literally got access to all these different versions of Windows that you can download into this. Good old XP. We're going to try a few of these out in a second. Vista 7, 8.1, 8, God, back in the day. Firewall app. And that'll let me just see things that's going on in my firewall in a second. So we'll drag that over here a minute. Now, it's automatically going through that Windows boot process, that installation process. I launched my remote desktop as well already. That's looking good to me. And it uses this unified QEMU, if I'm saying that right, QEMU boot system. And it says Windows has started successfully. Now, what we really got to do is on our router, on our firewall, we're going to be looking for it to connect. Now, it does take a few minutes. Don't forget, now the container is booted successfully, but we're inside Windows right now. It will be attempting to acquire an IP address from my firewall, from my router. Now, Firewaller is my router firewall combo, and it's attempting right now to acquire that. So we're going to give it a few seconds. So we've got our first unknown here. This is the container itself grabbing an IP address, by the way, just so you're aware. And you'll get it just this basic 192.168.1.2. It might be a few other things, but I've set this, as you can see, in the compose file to connect to this. Doesn't mean that it always will, especially if your network, you're gonna have to find a free IP for it or hope for the best. But this unknown container is not the one we're going to connect to. Even though it links back to this, it's not going to let us remote desktop using that tool. Because we're on a Mac VLAN, we can't just click on the 8006. Now, if you took off those networks and uncommented them, like I showed you, you could actually click on this 8006 port, and it would open up a web browser, which kind of acted as your remote desktop. But because we've opted to go into this network and it's on a Mac VLAN, it's not going to show that. Essentially, it's going to try and create something like that on our network, but it'll have a little green dot next to it indicating that it is set up correctly. There we go. As you can see, it's pulled one right there. So it took us about 5 minutes from starting that container to actually get it to pull an IP address from our system. And as you can see, it's running on 192.168.156 because that's the subnet I gave it, and it just basically found that IP address. And that is what you're looking for on your network. If you're following me step by step, it took me 5 minutes to get this, so it's not a process to rush. But now we've got that, we can literally type that in here. So yesterday it was 60, look, but now it's 56. So if we connect to this on 56, finally, here we go. 11 minutes after the container start time, we now have it. And if we look over here in our Dockur Compose, we've got literally username Docker, password is Gates with a capital G. 11 minutes that took. That was the longest one so far. But let's get into it. Don't warn me again, because I know about it. And here we go. And this thing is fast. I mean, look at this. Let's open up the Explorer. And here we are. Now, it's got our 64GB hard drive that we specified in our Compose. As you can see down here, we specified a 62GB hard drive. Obviously showing 61.7, but there we go. And we gave it a directory of home, kflix, my apps, container, VMs, test Windows 11. And that is down into the storage. And /storage in the container actually translates to your hard drive here. And this is it. Now, I've also been told that people have been successful in getting hardware acceleration working on here, passing through the GPU. That's something yet for me to look into. But if that is indeed possible, that sounds amazing. But remember, it's not just about passing it through to the container. You've got to try and pass it through into the container into this VM. But essentially, if we open up the web browser here, we've got Edge installed at the moment. Because this is just like a brand new installation. Up here, now I have gigabit fiber, so let's see what it's pulling from the internet speed-wise. Boom, look at that. Oh, Jesus. The whole speed is successfully pulling through this network. That is beautiful. And that, in part, is thanks to, in our Compose file, the DHCP is pulling its own connection, but this device down here, this vhost-net, it's using that network device to pull straight through. So I wonder what... Have a look in here. If we go into properties of the network, view the adapters. It was using a Red Hat VirtuIO, which is, yeah. So it was using up to a 10 gig speed virtual NIC to get through to the system there. But considering I've got gigabit fiber as well, it's pulling a bloody sweet speed from that. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. So imagine this, right? So you've got this installed. You can have a ton of these installed. It barely touches the resources on my network. On my Ubuntu server. So if I quickly sh into my server that I aptly named Kflix at 192.168.159, we do htop. I'm running a Ryzen 9 5900X. Got 64 gigs of RAM installed on here. And it's not even the most intense one. So I've looked, sort by 5.6% CPU. I mean, AdGuard Home is pulling more resources than this. There's our QEMU system, but you look, 5.1% CPU usage. It bursts up every now and then, but it's doing things in the background. If we go back over here, by the way, to our remote desktop. And this is using Windows Remote Desktop to get into this. It's just absolutely amazing. You've got all the normal settings that you would. Now, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not activated, obviously. So you need to activate Windows before you can personalize your PC. So it means, you could pop a Windows key into here. But we've got Windows Update on here. Let's check for updates to see if this works. I see even getting Windows updates. This is seriously impressive. You can't go wrong with that. And that's Windows 11. And that's running really, really good. I'm actually seriously impressed with that. If we now copy and paste that Compose, but this time we change to Windows 10. So it's Win 10, version Windows 10. If I just slightly change my path to Windows 10, because I've Docker and downed down and active the other Compose, I can actually spin this back up using this. If the other one was still active, I'd have to basically turn this into an external true by uncommenting this to run both side by side. And you probably have to bump the IP address up a notch as well. But let's give it a go, shall we? Let's do Windows 10 server. And it'll download Windows 10. Don't forget, again, we've not using that manual install option. It is commented out, which means everything is automatically being set up here. Save so much time. According to that, Windows has started successfully. So as before, we're just gonna get on the firewall here. It does take a few minutes after that notice to actually connect onto the network. Obviously, as we know, we will see one IP address unknown, which is the container IP. There's the container IP because we have that set. But we're looking for that Docker, something similar to this. Essentially, after the boot process, what's happening behind the scenes is because we have this DHCP ES, and we have device vhost-net, it's additionally installing that network driver into the system. So it might need to do a reboot. You know, there's a few things behind the scenes that we just can't see. You might be forgiven to think this is just not working. It is working. It just needs a bit of time, like it would if you were doing this. It's automated everything. Just imagine if you were looking for these network drivers and installing everything one by one. You just need a bit of time. And I find that the sweet spot is between 5 and 10 minutes, and things just seem to pop up and work fine. Okay, so behind the scenes there, you've seen that we've got the Windows Boot Manager. So what's probably happened there is it's probably installed those network drivers and is now rebooting the system. Here we go. And it should... Oh, hang on. I did comment out the password on the Compose, didn't I, earlier on? So, in fact, this possibly should just be Docker. Yeah, it is. There's no password on this one because I commented it out earlier. So now we should be presented with Windows 10, and it looks that way to me. It is still setting that system up. Remember, there's a lot to install on these things, but generally, we seem to be getting a good system here. God, this feels an age. This feels an absolute age ago. So it took us about 15 minutes from the start of the container to get this up and running. So if you're not seeing results, please wait. It will happen. So can Windows 10 pull that 1.7 gigabit per second speed? Oh, almost. Yeah, it's hit over the gig. 0.1. Windows 11 we're hitting 1.7 on this driver. So depending on my network overhead at the moment, that's again not bad. Moving on down. With Windows 8. So Windows version, Windows 8. Going to change our storage path to Windows 8. And we'll do Windows 8 server. Let's spin her up. We can connect to it. Oh, here we go. Right, so we don't have any password. It's blank. Yes, we're happy to connect to this computer. Here we go, Windows 8. Oh, interesting. Just Docker. Oh, there you go. Boom. Oh, wow. Scaling's quite crazy on this. So this is Windows 8.1. Oh, yes, I remember this horrible tile screen. God, does anyone else remember this? And then to go back to the desktop, you have to click desktop. That's one of the worst things they ever did, in my opinion. Right, we call Windows. Insects will can't open when access control is turned off. Okay. Let's put it on its basic setting. Can I open it from here? You can open it on the desktop, can't just can't open it in the other one. So God, the scaling on this is crazy. Fast.com. What speeds are we getting in here? And once again, we're hitting over the 1 gig. Keeping up with it. Windows 11 so far has been the fastest for access across that 10 gig nick. In fact, I think we should start leaving these in here on. Right. Let's stop and down that. Version down is Windows 7. It's Windows 7. Let's alter the folder it's going into. Test Windows 7. And we've unhashed, uncommented these, so this Docker gates is the password. Name is going to be Docker. Connect. And the password's going to be gates. Looks like we're getting in. Awesome stuff. Here we go, Windows 7. Boom. And this is Windows 7. God, the scaling's bloody terrible on this. So I will zoom in for you. Oh, we might be finding our compatibility limits during these tests here. Okay, so Google works. Very old school looking Google. Speed test. Let's try Google speed test. Yes, accept. God, even the old clicks. So we can't run a speed test on the normal Google server. What about Ookla? Ooh, continue. Yes. Oh, actually, close it down. Ooh, wow. Okay, so we'll get Windows Vista downloaded. So what we've done is we've amended the compose file. We've got version Vista. We've amended our storage, so it's testwin Vista. There you go, see, so it's changed to Windows CN2 CCRV. I'm glad that showed up while you're on the video there. So what IP address have we got? We're dealing with 130. So if we run the remote desktop for 130. The username is always Docker. We're waiting for that bit of network traffic to kick in, which usually indicates things are running for us. Oh, here we go. So we're going to put in password gates. Yes, connect. Don't warn me. Oh, here we are. Windows Vista. The scaling is insane as usual, but that's got to be related to the remote desktop session. We can get to Google. And we get to fast.com. Get to fast.com. Turn on. But it's not going to show us a speed test. I remember using this on a laptop for the first time. That was my first interaction, and it was like some sort of Acer. I'm sure it was an Acer Aspire laptop. And it looked the business. It even had a fingerprint sensor installed on it. It wasn't mine. It was a family friend's, and I was jealous as hell. Because it was nice. It was shiny black laptop. If I can find it, I'll pop it up on the screen for you. Nostalgia. So, continuing with the trend, onwards and downwards, let's go to Windows XP. It's going to be WinXP, WinXP directory, and just WinXP server. Okay, it looks like for whatever reason, Windows XP shut itself down. In fact, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop this. And I think on this last go around, I'm going to disable the network Mac VLAN and enter through the web browser. And this is a good demo to show you how you can do that. And this applies to all of them if you want it to. Right, okay. So we're doing Windows XP. Right, let's comment out the network stuff. We're going to comment out the DHCP, comment out the dev vhostnet. We're going to comment out the rest of this network stuff. All these drivers. So, and we're going to try and go in through the 8006. Why are you being like that now? Oh, and that appearing one there. Okay. Let's deploy this. Thumbs up, we can do the 8006. Here we go. Oh, straight away, come on. So that's working without the Mac VLAN. That is Windows XP. So that works without the Mac VLAN. This is just crazy. It's been decades and brings back quite a lot of memories. It probably does for you too. Good old guest accounts. Just the whole... This was bleeding edge. This was the gold standard of Microsoft at its time. Peak Microsoft. Just absolutely amazing. Good old security center. Unreal. Good old Messenger. Crikey, that brings back a lot of memories. No way we're getting on that. But remember the fun on that. Absolutely crazy. Just the way everything looks and feels. Crazy. And that basically brings us to the end of our video. Even more nostalgic, considering we're not going back into 98 to 95 on this video. That's as close as we're going to get. But, classic Windows Media Player. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Please like and subscribe. I'm almost at the 1,000 subscriber mark. Not far off. I've just hit my 4,000 watch hours. And it's all thanks to you guys. So thank you very much. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one.